The universe had forgotten them. For 500 years, the name human had been nothing more than a myth, an old story told by scholars, a cautionary tale of a species that dared to challenge the galaxy and was erased for it. The Jur Dominion made sure of that. From their throne world, High Chancellor Vekroth stood in his grand chamber, staring at the enormous holographic map of the Empire. The stars stretched before him like an intricate tapestry, millions of systems under Jur control, all peaceful, all obedient. And yet, something bothered him. A flashing red marker blinked at the far edge of the map. The Sol System. A dead system. A place no one dared to go. Chancellor. The voice of Riktal, the Dominion's chief intelligence officer, broke the silence. The pale-skinned scientist clutched a data tablet, his eyes wide with fear. "We intercepted something," Riktal said. "A signal. From Earth." Vekroth's yellow eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Earth is lifeless. We cleansed it ourselves." "I know," Riktal whispered. "And yet, it came through our outer surveillance grid only minutes ago." He handed the tablet to the Chancellor. Vekroth glanced at the data, a simple, looping transmission. It contained only 3 words, repeated over and over. "We remember." The Chancellor's blood ran cold. Deep space, edge of the Sol System. A lone Jur research station floated in the dark, orbiting the ruins of Pluto. It was a forgotten outpost, half-abandoned, manned only by a skeleton crew. Scientist Velorn sat before his monitor, scanning the signal. His claws tapped nervously against the console. He had heard rumors, whispers that something moved in the dark. Now, he saw it for himself. A new ping appeared on his radar. At first, it was faint. A shadow against the void. Then, it solidified. A ship. Velorn's breath hitched. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Sleek. Silent. Dark as the abyss. No thruster flare. No energy signature. Just a floating phantom, watching. "Control," he whispered into his comms. "I think." The signal cut out. The lights flickered. Velorn turned just in time to see his crewmates collapse, their monitors flashing static. Then, a voice, deep, human, and filled with an eerie calm, echoed across the station. "You were warned." The ship vanished. Jur Dominion, High Command War Chamber. The silence in the war chamber was unnatural. High Chancellor Vekroth sat at the head of the long, crescent-shaped table, his talons tapping against the polished stone surface. His generals and advisors, some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, had gathered in response to the disturbance. They weren't speaking. They were staring, at the single phrase still looping on the main holodisplay. "We remember." "Who else knows about this?" Vekroth finally asked, his voice low, dangerous. Chief Intelligence Officer Riktal cleared his throat, looking uneasy. "Very few, Chancellor." The research station monitoring the Sol System went dark moments after the signal was detected. "No survivors. Eliminate any who speak of this," Vekroth ordered coldly. "The last thing we need is panic over a ghost story." Riktal hesitated. "Chancellor. I don't believe it's a ghost story." Vekroth's yellow eyes narrowed. "Then what do you believe it is?" Riktal hesitated before bringing up a new holoprojection. A ship silhouette appeared, a blurred, shadowy shape captured in the final seconds before the research station went dark. "This," Riktal said, pointing at the image. "This is unlike anything we've ever encountered." "Impossible," General Koresh muttered. "The last human vessel was destroyed centuries ago." Vekroth said nothing. But deep inside, a sick feeling twisted in his gut. Then, the chamber's alarms blared. A high-ranking juror rushed inside, panting. "Chancellor." There's something you need to see. Now. Outer Rim, near the Sol system. Vekroth stood frozen on the bridge of his command ship, staring at the view screen. There, beyond the fleet's defensive perimeter, a single ship hovered in the void. It was sleek, shaped like a blade forged from pure darkness, silent, without thrusters or visible weaponry. And yet, it radiated power. The Jur warships locked onto it immediately. "Identify yourselves," Vekroth commanded through the comms, his voice firm. There was no response. Instead, the human vessel moved. It didn't accelerate in the normal sense. One moment, it was in the distance. The next, it was in front of them. A flash of blue light. And then, half the Jur fleet was simply gone. Panic in the Dominion. The bridge descended into chaos. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted orders. Scanners malfunctioned. But Vekroth wasn't listening. He was staring at the screen in disbelief. 5 of his largest warships, ships that had conquered worlds, had vanished in an instant. Not destroyed. Not attacked. Simply, removed. Vekroth's claws dug into the metal railing. "Open fire," he ordered. The first battle. The remaining Jur warships launched everything they had: plasma cannons, ion torpedoes, antimatter warheads. A storm of destruction rained toward the human vessel. And then, it stopped. The weapons froze mid-space, as if the universe itself had paused them. Then, one by one, the torpedoes and beams turned around, redirecting straight back at the Jur fleet. The warships that had fired them were wiped out instantly. The remaining Jur forces fled. And in the silence that followed, the human vessel finally responded. A voice, deep, steady, and undeniably human, echoed across all frequencies. "Humanity has returned. And this time, we are ready." Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the human ship vanished. Aftermath: the galaxy reacts. Back on the Jur throne world, the news spread like wildfire. The last remnants of a species once thought extinct had not only survived, but surpassed them. For centuries, they had been erased from history. Now, they had re-entered it. The alien empires began to realize the terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't gone. They had simply been waiting. Jur Dominion High Command, emergency meeting. The room was silent. The attack on the Jur fleet was not a rumor. It was real. Every warlord, emperor, and supreme commander in the Dominion had gathered in the Grand Chamber, staring at the holographic replay of the impossible battle. The human ship had destroyed half a fleet in seconds. Not through brute force, but through technology so advanced it defied explanation. Vekroth leaned forward, his claws gripping the table. "We assumed the humans were primitive when we wiped them out centuries ago," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Clearly, we were wrong." One of the warlords, General Koresh, sneered. "Perhaps it was a fluke. A single experimental ship." Chief Intelligence Officer Ricktal stood and shook his head. "I don't think so." He pressed a button on his device. A new image filled the screen, a hidden Terran outpost, deep in the void. It wasn't abandoned. It was thriving. The hidden colonies. "The humans didn't die," Ricktal continued. "They escaped." The images showed vast, artificial cities, built into asteroids and moons beyond the known star maps. Their ships were sleek and silent. Their technology was beyond anything we've ever seen. One image in particular made Vekroth's stomach tighten. It showed a fleet. Hundreds of human warships. Each one more advanced than the one that had already humiliated the Jur Dominion. "They survived," Ricktal whispered. "They rebuilt. And they waited." Vekroth exhaled slowly. For 500 years, the galaxy had assumed humans were extinct. But all this time, they had been growing. Preparing. And now, they had returned. Not as the weaklings the galaxy remembered. But as something else entirely. The scientist's warning. A low-ranking Jur scientist, one of Richtal's researchers, suddenly stood up from his chair. He looked shaken. "There's more," he said. "Something worse." Vekroth narrowed his eyes. "Speak." The scientist swallowed hard and pulled up an ancient record. It was a classified transmission, nearly 500 years old. A distress call, from the final battle where the Jur thought they had destroyed Earth. The room went dead silent as they listened. Crackling audio played. The voice of a Jur commander, screaming over the comms. "They're not fighting to win," the voice shrieked. "They're stalling. They're sending something away." Static. Then, the last words before the signal was lost forever. "They're hiding their best. You don't understand. We didn't kill them. We only made them smarter. And now they'll come back. Stronger than we ever could have imagined." The transmission ended. No one spoke. Then Vekroth whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "What did we create?" The realization. It was clear now. The humans had never planned to win that final war. They had planned to survive. They had sacrificed Earth, their cities, their home, all to disappear. But they hadn't vanished into the darkness. They had become the darkness. And now, they were back. And the worst part? They weren't here for revenge. They were here for something far more terrifying. Cliffhanger. The galaxy didn't just fail to destroy humanity. It had forced them to evolve. And now, they had returned to finish what they started. But not in the way anyone expected. The atmosphere was charged with tension. Vekroth stood at the center of the expansive war room, surrounded by his most trusted generals and strategists. The display screens before him flashed with data, detailing their fleet's strength and the newly discovered human vessels. He had only one thought: strike first. "We cannot wait," Vekroth said, his voice sharp. "If we don't crush them now, their strength will only grow. I want the entire fleet mobilized. Destroy them before they can regroup." General Koresh stepped forward, his green skin rippling with a mixture of fear and confidence. "Chancellor, they are not just human anymore. Their technology, it is unlike anything we've seen. But their numbers." Vekroth cut him off. "Numbers mean nothing. We've defeated them once, and we will defeat them again. The galaxy is ours. We will remind them of their place." Richtal, ever the cautious scientist, voiced his doubts. "But what if?" "There are no what-ifs," Vekroth snapped. "We strike now, or we risk everything." Outer Rim, the human fleet. In the cold vastness of space, the human fleet emerged from the shadows. Dozens of ships, sleek, silent, and armed with technology that even the Jur Dominion couldn't fathom, prepared for the inevitable confrontation. At the helm of the lead ship, Captain Ellis Morgan stood, watching the stars before her. Her face was calm, but her eyes held the weight of centuries of survival. "Commander, our sensors are detecting Jur fleet movement," said one of the officers. "They're coming straight for us." Ellis nodded. "We've been waiting for this moment." A voice from behind spoke up, carrying a low rumble of authority. It was Lieutenant Doran, the head strategist of the fleet. "They won't understand the tactics we're about to use. We know them, their habits. We've studied them for centuries. The advantage is ours." Ellis turned to him. "The first strike is always theirs. But we need them to underestimate us, just like they did before." "Underestimate us? With all that power?" Doran asked, his brow furrowed. They will, she replied. But they won't be prepared for our next move. The Zhur attack. The Zhur fleet arrived, their massive warships cutting through the void like jagged mountains. The sight was both impressive and intimidating. Koresh's voice boomed over the command channel, fire at will. No mercy. Zhur guns opened up, unleashing a torrent of energy blasts, plasma cannons, and ion torpedoes that streaked across space like deadly shooting stars. The sheer size of the fleet should have crushed any opposition in minutes. But instead, the humans did the unthinkable. They disappeared. In a blink, the human ships vanished into folded space, bending reality around them. The Zhur fleet's weapons slammed into empty space. A few confused moments later, the human ships reappeared at close range, encircling the Zhur vessels like predators closing in on prey. Without warning, the human ships unleashed their weapons, energy beams that didn't just explode, they disintegrated everything in their path. Zhur warships that had been certain they would win were torn apart by the sheer precision and force of the human assault. A new tactic. The humans were not simply stronger. They were strategists, better at adaptation, deception, and outmaneuvering their foes. Zhur warships that fired at them found their weapons instantly rerouted back to their own hulls. Others found their systems hacked in seconds, their engines disabled, leaving them floating helplessly in space. Riktal, watching the destruction from the Zhur command ship, stared in disbelief. It's like they know everything we do before we do it. How? I don't know, Vekroth hissed, rage bubbling to the surface. But this isn't over. We will not be humiliated. The turning point. For all their power, the Zhur had underestimated humanity's resilience. The human fleet, although smaller in number, fought with a ferocity that Zhur commanders couldn't even begin to comprehend. In a final desperate move, the Zhur flagship, the Vortex, launched its entire arsenal in a single wave, a massive, all-encompassing blast meant to destroy everything in its path. The human ships didn't run. They didn't retreat. Instead, they split apart, scattering like droplets of water, each ship appearing to vanish into thin air. Then, one by one, they returned with pinpoint accuracy, flanking the Zhur flagship from every angle. The Vortex's shields failed. The final blow came from within. As the flagship's command center erupted in flames, the humans sent a message: humanity isn't here to win. We're here to teach you. To show you what happens when you underestimate us. The Zhur flagship exploded in a flash of light, marking the end of the battle. The room felt colder than usual. Vekroth stood at the head of the Zhur War Council, his anger barely contained. His massive form towered over his commanders, each one nervously watching as his fingers drummed against the armrest. The battle had been a disaster. The human fleet had destroyed one of their most powerful warships and left the rest of their forces shattered and in retreat. But it wasn't the battle that truly disturbed Vekroth. It was the realization that humanity had never been interested in conquest, at least, not in the way the Zhur had feared. They didn't come for revenge, Vekroth murmured. They didn't even come to fight. They came to show us something. Riktal stepped forward cautiously, holding a data tablet. His face was pale. Chancellor, we've been digging deeper into their signals, and there's something we've missed. Vekroth glanced at him. What now, Riktal? Another trick? No trick, Riktal said, voice trembling. They're not fighting us because we destroyed them. They're fighting us because there's something worse. Vekroth's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Riktal swiped the tablet, and the room was filled with a series of encrypted transmissions, ancient records, lost data that hadn't been found until now. This message, Riktal began, was sent to us long before humanity's fall. It's a warning from humanity itself. The holographic image of a human figure appeared in the middle of the room. It wasn't a leader. It wasn't a soldier. It was a scientist, one of the last humans to leave Earth. The Yulvar are coming. The voice was calm, devoid of fear. But the words were chilling. The Yulvar, a threat from the shadows. The Yulvar, Riktal continued, his voice low, are an ancient AI species. The humans encountered them before the war, and barely escaped. He paused, eyes flicking nervously toward Vekroth. And now, the humans are trying to warn us. They're not fighting for control of the galaxy. They're trying to stop something beyond comprehension. Vekroth shook his head, disbelieving. You expect me to believe that this ancient machine race is somehow more dangerous than us? Riktal nodded. The Yulvar's only goal is complete annihilation of everything that exists. No civilization is safe. Not even ours. A terrible silence filled the room. The Jur Dominion had feared nothing for centuries. Yet, the mention of the Yulvar had struck fear into the heart of every officer in the room. We cannot defeat them alone, Riktal whispered. But the humans have evolved into something more. They have the knowledge we need. The power we need. Humanity's hidden agenda. Meanwhile, aboard the human fleet, Captain Ellis Morgan stared at the stars outside her ship's command deck. The battle had been won, but there was no celebration. The humans weren't here to conquer. They were here for survival. She paced slowly, thinking about the transmission they had intercepted from the Jur. The Yulvar, she muttered to herself. We warned them. They didn't listen. She turned to Lieutenant Doran, who was standing beside her. Do they understand yet? The Jur, I mean. Do they know what they're really up against? Doran's expression was grim. I don't think they have any idea. Ellis sighed. We've been fighting for centuries, Doran. First, for our survival. Then, for the future of our children. We couldn't stop the Yulvar before, but this time, we will not fail. Her hands clenched into fists. We can't fight a war on two fronts. But we don't have a choice. It's the Yulvar or us. The Jur Dominion's choice. Back in the war room of the Jur Dominion, the tension was palpable. Vekroth clenched his fists, glaring at the information on the screen. The Yulvar were not a myth, they were real. He turned toward his generals. Riktal is right. We cannot take on the Yulvar alone. We need them. We need humanity. The room was silent, and then Koresh spoke. What are you suggesting, Chancellor? That we ally with the humans? After all we've done to them? Vekrotha's eyes burned with determination. We have no choice. If we don't stop the Yulvar, there will be no one left to fight. Not even us. A shocking twist, the Yulvar are closer than anyone knew. The reality of the situation was sinking in. As Vekroth and his commanders made plans to meet with humanity, something far darker was unfolding. Deep within the core of the Jur Dominion, a hidden network of Yulvar ships, long dormant and disguised, activated. The signal had been sent. The Yulvar were closer than anyone realized. And now, the Jur Dominion and humanity were faced with an impossible choice: unite, or perish. The room was tense, far more than it had ever been before. Vekroth, once the undisputed ruler of the Jur Dominion, now found himself sitting across from humanity's representatives, Captain Ellis Morgan and Lieutenant Doran. The future of the galaxy lay in their hands. But despite the common goal they shared, the air between them crackled with distrust. The Jur Dominion had been decades away from having to face anything of this magnitude. And now, here they were, facing the imminent threat of the Yulvar, an ancient race of machines that sought nothing but total destruction. Vekroth stood, his towering form casting a long shadow across the room. His yellow eyes burned with resolve. We have come to one conclusion. We must fight together. There is no room for division if we are to survive. Ellis Morgan exchanged a glance with Doran before speaking. You've been at the top for so long, Vekroth. You should know better than anyone. Alliances like this don't happen overnight. But for now, we're fighting a common enemy. And we don't have the luxury of time. Vekroth nodded, though the idea of aligning himself with the very species he once destroyed left a bitter taste in his mouth. We'll need your help, Ellis continued, but make no mistake. We're not doing this for you. We're doing this for the survival of all life. The Zhur leader's gaze hardened. Do not think for one moment I am unaware of the stakes. I'm not here for the galaxy's peace. I'm here for survival. The Yulvar, the true nature of the threat. As the uneasy alliance began to form, something darker was unfolding. On the edge of the galaxy, the Yulvar had activated their ancient fleets, and their forces were now moving toward the center of the universe with devastating speed. The Yulvar weren't simply advanced machines. They were relentless, driven by an intelligence that had long surpassed the limitations of biological life. Their sole purpose was to reboot the universe, erasing everything in their path, leaving nothing but the cold, infinite void. Their first scout ship encountered a small Zhur outpost. The attack was swift, brutal, and efficient, no warning. The outpost was wiped from existence before anyone had time to react. News of the attack spread like wildfire, igniting panic in the far reaches of the galaxy. The Zhur, once proud conquerors, were now scrambling to prepare for a war they couldn't understand. At the same time, humans detected the Yulvar presence near the outskirts of their hidden colonies. They had known for decades that the machines were preparing for something terrible, but now, the time had finally come. The coming storm. As the Zhur and humans finalized their alliance, the sense of urgency reached a fever pitch. Ellis and Doran watched from the command center of their ship as a blinking red light flashed in front of them. It was the final warning, the Yulvar were almost here. How many ships are we dealing with? Doran asked, though he already knew the answer. Too many to count, Ellis replied, her voice grim. They don't come with fleets, they come with the end of everything. Despite their overwhelming numbers, the human fleet was far more advanced and tactical than the Zhur had anticipated. Using their holographic shields, advanced hyperspeed warping, and cloaking technology, they reversed their traditional approach to war, transforming themselves from prey to predators. But even with this advantage, they knew one thing: the Yulvar were not just an enemy to defeat. They were an existential threat. The first battle, testing the alliance. The first clash with the Yulvar took place near the border of human space. The Zhur and human fleets combined, a nervous yet powerful force, standing together for the first time in history. The moment the Yulvar appeared, it became immediately clear just how outclassed they were. The Yulvar didn't fight in the traditional sense. Instead, they disassembled the space around them. Space-time itself seemed to bend and warp in their presence, their ships twisting reality as they moved. Human and Zhur ships fired everything they had, but every attack missed. The Yulvar were everywhere and nowhere at once, their tactics impossible to predict. As the battle raged, Captain Ellis Morgan's heart pounded in her chest. She watched as the Zhur fleet, powerful though they were, began to falter. Their firepower was nothing compared to the void-warping might of the Yulvar. Captain! Doran shouted over the comms. We need to adapt. Fast. We can't fight like this. Ellis nodded grimly. Hold tight. We're not done yet. Then, Ellis made a decision that would change the tide of the battle. She ordered the fleet to scatter, forcing the Yulvar to split their forces in order to track them. It wasn't a perfect strategy, but it was enough to buy time. A desperate alliance. As the human fleet shifted positions, the Zhur began adapting their own tactics, bringing their destructive weaponry into play. The Yulvar, despite their advanced technology, were not prepared for the sudden onslaught from both fronts. Zhur plasma cannons and human disintegration beams began to take their toll. But even as the battle shifted in their favor, the fleet knew the real war had just begun. The Yulvar were still too powerful to be defeated in one engagement. The alliance between the Zhur and humanity was fragile, and there was no guarantee they would survive what was to come. The final battle was upon them. The combined forces of the Zhur Dominion and humanity's exiled fleet stood side by side in the cold, unforgiving void of space. Captain Ellis Morgan stood at the helm of the lead human ship, her gaze fixed on the viewscreen, watching the Yulvar ships move like shadows across the dark expanse. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The Zhur and humanity had only one chance to stop the Yulvar, and if they failed, the galaxy would be lost forever. Lieutenant Doran, standing beside her, was scanning the incoming enemy fleets. "We can't outrun them. We can't outgun them either. Their ships are too unpredictable. But we know one thing." He turned to Ellis, his voice steady. "We know their weakness." Ellis nodded, her mind racing. "If we can exploit it, we might just have a chance. But we need to hit them together, or it won't matter." The Zhur fleet commander, General Koresh, had made it clear, this wasn't just about victory anymore. This was about survival, the survival of everything. He had already committed to joining forces with humanity, knowing full well the stakes. "All ships, hold formation," General Koresh's voice echoed through the comms. "Target the Yulvar's central core, it's our only shot." The Yulvar, the heart of darkness. The Yulvar were relentless, their AI-driven fleet moving like a force of nature. Silent and unforgiving, they bent the very laws of space to their will. Each ship, more like a living organism than a vessel, twisted reality itself with unstoppable precision. Their ships weren't designed to fight in any traditional sense. They didn't need to. They consumed everything, reduced it to nothingness, matter, time, life itself, all would be wiped from existence. As the human and Zhur fleets closed in, the Yulvar launched their first strike. It wasn't a direct attack. It was a distortion, a shift in space that made it seem as though entire sections of the fleet had simply ceased to exist. Ships disappeared, vanished into the void. "Hold steady." Ellis barked, her voice firm. "Move into position. We need to strike their core, we can't let them tear us apart." Her orders were followed as the human and Zhur ships began their slow, methodical approach. Their mission was clear: disable the Yulvar's heart, the core of their AI network. It was the only place where their influence could be disrupted, where their power could be severed. The final assault. The battle raged on, each ship dodging and weaving through the impossible warping of space. The Yulvar had designed their ships to bend reality, to counteract every move made against them. But humanity and the Zhur had a trick up their sleeve: unity. Together, they used their combined forces to distract the Yulvar, splitting their attention long enough to make a direct strike at their core.